Hello, and welcome to the March 2026 VMware by Broadcom TAM customer webinar. The intent of this webinar is to provide you with practical information to get the most out of your entitlements. Before we get into today's content, there are just a couple of basic announcements. The April TAM customer webinar will go deep into all of the benefits of Avi load balancing solution. As the application landscape has gotten more complex with container-based applications, Avi is leading the pack in solving these new challenges. Your interaction during this webinar is important, so please make use of the Q&A feature of Zoom to ask your questions. If we are unable to answer your question during this webinar, please be sure and reach out to your TAM and ask them to follow up. At the end of today's session, you'll be prompted to fill out a simple survey related to the value you received from this session and any topic suggestions for the future. Your completion of this survey is a valuable gift back to us, and we'd greatly appreciate your response. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and your TAM can make the recording link available to you. Usually we tell you that it will be public on our YouTube channel after a few months, but we're making a change starting with this webinar, and we'll make the recordings public as soon as they are posted to YouTube. So if you're not already, please be sure and follow the VMware TAM Services YouTube channel to get the future recordings as soon as they are uploaded. That brings us to today's speaker and topic. Ryan Johnson is a VMware staff TAM and Distinguished Engineer Emeritus at Broadcom, and will be talking to us about infra as code for VM templates. Ryan, please go ahead.
Hey, so I'm gonna be on YouTube. Oh, fun. Hey, folks, let me get started. Hope you can see everything. Thanks, Brian. So my name's Ryan Johnson. I'm a staff TAM here at VMware by Broadcom. I've been here just about 16 years. Before that, I was in the VCF division. I was a distinguished engineer, so distinguished engineer emeritus, where I worked on the engineering for VMware Cloud Foundation, as well as I was one of the principal authors on the VMware Validated Designs, Validated Solutions. I worked on Terraform providers and PowerShell modules that you may have come across, and also was one of the principal authors on one of the Mastering vSphere books. I love to talk to people. If you have any questions, please reach out to TAM. I'm happy to have follow-up conversations one-on-one regarding this topic to help you. I really believe in the power of community, the power of the TAM services, and hope you learn something from here. Whether you are already you've never heard of these projects and the capabilities, I hope you learn something. Whether you already use it, I hope you learn something. And if you are an expert or want to contribute, hope we can kind of bridge that connection and any divide so that we can build a better community and help enable you to be able to build your machine images that you use for your workloads. You can find me on GitHub at github.com/1030am and on LinkedIn. My contact information is there. But again, feel free to reach out through your TAM. So today's session, we're going to talk about automated machine image artifacts using the Packer plugins by Broadcom, and I want to underscore the by Broadcom piece. And there will be a lot of demos in this. Brian, what was our time limit on this? I just because I can talk forever, but was it an hour or 90 minutes? What was it?
Yeah, either. It's up to you. Typically,
Okay,
we try and
cool.
wrap it up within 90 minutes. I know the
Oh,
folks in Europe,
easy.
it's a little bit late in the day for them. So, if you did 60 minutes, I think they'd appreciate that as well.
Cool. We'll see how the demos help with that. Feel free to ask questions if it's relevant while during the topic. I've asked Brian and the crew to let me know, and I'll ask questions along the way. And you will see some live demos. So let's just jump kind of the details. So. I used to be a customer, right? Before 16 years ago. And I've seen customers along the way, even today, who are building, they have this technical debt of hey, I need to create an image that's used for my applications in my data center, right? And what are the machine images, the templates that you use that are kind of, your quote unquote golden images, right? Or platinum or whatever term you want to use it. But a lot of customers, they have kind of a run book approach or a step by step, and it's a very manual process to say, oh, and I need to build this rail image, and there's someone maybe very specialized that builds that rail image or that Windows image and puts very specific tools on. And Not to mention, when you build that, you want to at some point patch that, apply a patch or apply another tool to it. And those can also have security implications. Not to mention the error proneness that that has when you're following this run book, right? Or doing it by muscle memory or what have you. And also, hey, if you have somebody that has access to the image, could convert it from a template to an image, inject something in there, right? So maybe the bad actor, right? Just maybe leaving your company, or however that may be, and then turn it back into it, and something gets leaked in, right? And so what we're talking about here is the process of how can you automate that process with infrastructure as code, right? I've seen customers that have just now started to use this. I think people have been very familiar with it. As a TAM, my customer uses this extensively, and so I support them with this and this process. And the whole point is, how can I use infrastructure as code, some declarative framework, right, to describe what I want to be built for my image, right? Whether it's a Linux-based distribution or a Windows-based operating system, what tools I want on it, what devices, what patch levels, what configuration for the hardware, et cetera, the disk drives, et cetera. How can I automate that with infrastructure as code, right? Defining that in some kind of human readable, intelligible process that I can run through, a pipeline or a command or what have you, that will always give me the same effect every time if I need to rebuild an image. So that's the kind of process we're talking about. So hopefully some of you guys have already kind of come across this, and if you haven't, maybe you'll see some of the benefits of that of this process. So we're talking about moving from this manual configuration to immutable infrastructure using infrastructure as code. And behind this process is an engine, a CLI called Packer. Okay? And Packer is an open source project by HashiCorp, right, which is now owned by IBM. But it's been around for quite some time. And I like to kind of say it's like the unsung hero of the internet. This uh, project, this engine, has the ability to allow you to create images for different types of providers, right? Whether it's different cloud providers or on premises, by integrating with different plugins, right? Well, first off, your plugin, right, which is kind of like the intermediary engine, right? So something like for a desktop hypervisor or vSphere, VCF, right? Or could be for another a public cloud provider, right? And Azure and Amazon, et cetera. It can work with all those through these plugins. But the core piece is this Packer CLI, this engine, all right? And there's an SDK, but that's for the plugins. But you can define there's a thing called HCL, or the HashiCorp configuration language, which is super easy readable, easier to read than YAML, definitely easier to read than JSON, right? But it's where you can define the configurations and the items that you want to run, the plugins you want to run, and how you want to build that image. And then you also have things that are called like provisioners, right? And provisioners can be things like shell commands, PowerShell, Bash, Cloud init, right? If want to use Cloud init on your Linux images, and even Ansible. I know a lot of customers use Ansible for configuration management, and you can easily integrate Ansible, your existing Ansible roles and playbooks that you might have, right into the workflow that you have to build your images. So it gives you this whole like complete like ability to create what I like to call sometimes is a manifested build of a machine image, right? And have it build that for you. So before I get into this piece, these plugins, right? But there's two different types. There's two different plugins that Broadcom has available today. And I want to underscore that Broadcom piece. Traditionally, the plugins, if you are familiar, and even if you're not familiar, these plugins were developed originally by HashiCorp or were donated to HashiCorp at some point. Um, and over the years, there's been a lot of different contributorship and such. And a few years ago, I started working a lot with this um, and working in the open source and started getting involved with the core project as well as the plugins, and they were owned and managed by HashiCorp. As of January 27th of this year, the two plugins, the Packer plugin for VMware Desktop Hypervisors as well as the Packer plugin for VMware vSphere, were transitioned from HashiCorp to Broadcom. They are now Broadcom originated open source projects on the VMware GitHub organization. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll show the repos, etc. But they are open source projects that are supported by the maintainer, right, which is yours truly here, as well as one other individual who assists me. Um, and they are also supported by the community. Everything's done in the open, right? But it's open source. But there's one for desktop hypervisors as well as your bare metal hypervisor. So desktop hypervisors, obviously being VMware Fusion Pro and VMware Fusion Pro and Workstation Pro. And if you're not familiar, the latest version of Workstation and Fusion is the 25H2, actually update one. So if you're using Fusion 13 or Workstation 17, right, .x, time to upgrade, right? If you're using that at home or at work. So just kind of FYI on that. And then of course there's the bare metal one for Packer plugin for bare metal. And that gives you the ability to interact with vSphere or VMware Cloud Foundation using the native API. So you have two different options here to use, depending on what your strategy is or your environment, what you're working with, right? The desktop plugin, right? Kind of as general. And then we're going to kind of jump to a live demo, kind of show you kind of the coolness, so you can kind of get a feel, not just this slideware, my weird slides here, but also kind of actually see it in motion, right? Seeing examples that you could, spin up and just kind of touch, get your feet wet, and then kind of build from there. And your TAM and myself are happy to help support you to help learn this. But the desktop plugin, again, it's engineered kind of like that first mile for kind of the desktop, right? You may want to, in your home labs, right, run, a nested ESX, right, on Workstation, right? Or you might want to do nested VCF on it, right? But you've got these, nice, MacBooks and, heavy duty, machines. So let me see myself. I'm a Mac guy, right? My personal machine with the M4 Max over there. But I run virtual machines all the time. I'm always building because I'm always doing different kinds of testing. But I need different distributions. But I have this, killer memory, hardware acceleration, right? I got different types of, got some of the new the AMD type processors, right? ARM processors. I can run that on there, run nested virtualization, and good to go. And then it has some cool advanced network simulation, right? So if I want to do NAT, I want to do bridged, I want to do host only, I have that ability to build machines that can do that on my own laptop, right? And I can export those leave them as the VMX files, right? The traditional multiple different levels of files. Or I can even package those up into an OVA that I could then, save. I could ship somewhere else. I could share with peer. Or I can create even vagrant boxes so that I can have these high fidelity replicas that I can send around. Maybe it could even be a replica of a production app if it needed to simulate something, right? And the whole kind of concept, again, it's kind of had this concept of a greenfield or brownfield in a way, is there's two basic builders inside the Packer plugin for VMware Desktop Hypervisors. The first plugin we're talking about. And that's from a greenfield perspective or a net new machine image you want to build, right? Say you want to build a image for Debian, right? A nice, fun Debian 13 image build, right? Well, you start actually from the base ISO, right? That ISO that you can get from from Debian or Ubuntu or RHEL or wherever it may be. But you can actually use Packer with the Packer plugin and build a machine image with that ISO for that guest operating system. Build the hardware, the virtual machine with the required hardware you need. Inject the ISO, have it go through and do a kickstart build for like typical OS builds, which can be done through HTTP. It can be done through kickstart with a CD based one. A couple different ways you can do that. You can use Cloud init, and then build the operating system, inject all the packages, all the updates that you want that you need, and the last output is you have a virtual machine, right? You can start that up, you can clone it, you can snapshot it. Even the plugin itself will even create the snapshots for you if you want to, which is cool. But let's say that's your gold image at the time, right? You could always recreate that and run it again, right? Just build it again, right? Or you could build on top of it with like the kind of brownfield kind of concept of like the VMware VMX, or I like to call it VMware clone, which can take that existing image that you just built in this top level pipeline, right? But then take it and maybe take that, power it online, inject new patches or new binaries that you need, and then repackage it to another layered application. So now I've got two virtual machines, or three or four, right? But I built upon that base, right? Which is really cool. And actually, in the last version that I've just released, 2.0 or 2.10 actually, as of last week. Not only can you just pull from a virtual machine clone, you can actually pull from an OVA and an OVF. If you happen to export it as an OVA or OVF in the first step, or you had to get from another vendor or something like that, you can actually pull those in. So I'm going to pause. Well, I'll talk about this, then we'll kind of do some demos. Um, Now, once you get past, just the desktop side, there's another plugin, and that's the Packer plugin for VMware vSphere, right? So on the desktop plugin, right, it's using a lot of the VM run and vdisk manager commands in the background, right, along with some special instrumentation that I wrote for a Go package for the VNC. But over on the vSphere side, the Packer plugin for VMware vSphere, this uses a native API integration directly into vSphere. It does require that you have, a licensed copy of vSphere, because it has write access to the API, but it uses the vSphere APIs through the Go SDK. The Go SDK being Go vMommy, which is also another open source project. And this gives you ability to actually build those images, not just on a desktop side, but you can build these across your infrastructure, right? You could build these images, save these as traditional VM templates. You could save them into a vSphere content library, right, as a content library item, or as a content library item as an OVF template or a VM template, right? You have that option of doing both. So kind of three different options. Well, four, I said, I'd probably say four, really. You can save it as a traditional template. You can save it into the content library as content item, can be a OVF template or a VM template, but you can also export it in addition, and you can export that as an OVA, right? If you want to OVA or OVF. So you have kind of like this whole gamut of opportunities. In fact, I'll hopefully be able to share you an additional, down here it says artifact post-processing. I've actually got another tool that I'm working on, hope to release sometime this first half of the year. I started working on last year, to actually show how you can potentially send those to another destination of Artifactory, which you could call. So we'll talk about that. And the builders inside of the vSphere plugin, right? So first plugin being one for desktop hypervisors, the second one being for vSphere. It has three builders, right? The first one being vSphere ISO, very similar to the VMware Desktop ISO, right? It's a base OS generation. You can boot from an ISO. I'll build it onto ESX on an ESX host. Install the guest operating system. Do all the provisioning, the hardware, right? Install patches. Put whatever you need in that operating system. Package it up, and now you have a bootstrapped image, right? That is your golden image at that point, right? But then it has another one, vSphere clone, which gives you ability to take that pre-existing image, right, that you had, bring that online, right? And then inject new patches and do the kind of that layered patching if that's what you want to do. You can take either approach. And there's also one for VMware Supervisor. This one gives you the ability to deploy and publish images directly to the vSphere Supervisor using the VM service as well. So three different builders depending on your strategy you want to use. So again, two paths to provisioning. There's the ISO builders, and there's kind of those VMX or clone builders, right? And again, there's that supervisor option, right? So I think from here, I'm actually going to kind of do two quick demos for you. The first demo, real quick, and Brian, are there any questions before we do a live demo here?
Nope, I don't see any.
Cool. So just in case you aren't familiar, in case you're looking for documentation on Packer itself, you can go to packer.io. It will redirect you to the HashiCorp developer site with everything regarding Packer itself and the core engine. There are subpages within there where you can actually look up VMware, and you can find the one for desktop hypervisors, right? And you can also look up vSphere, and you'll see the integration for vSphere. All the documentation for the plugins are here on developer.hashicorp.com. As soon as we publish a release on GitHub, the documentation from the projects gets integrated and sucked right into this developer website. I do have plans to actually have the documentation within our GitHub repos. And to speak of our GitHub repos, right before I do a demo here, our repositories for these plugins, they are open source. They're hosted on github.com/VMware, and you can find the Packer plugin for VMware vSphere here. Everything is here. Any issues, pull requests, discussions, and there's another one for the vSphere one. So if I looked over here, Packer plugin for VMware vSphere, I can see the license release, right? I can see the details on it, and down here I can see the same thing for the desktop hypervisors, right? A little bit of details. You can always feel free to, if you have a GitHub account, you can feel free to star and watch the repositories, and you can monitor the releases as they are released and get notifications for those releases. I am very detailed in my releases, so you'll see anything that's breaking changes, enhancement, bug fixes. Everything's always posted here. But as soon as they are released, they are published. The documentation is published to the developer websites. So real quick also about these repositories. Issues, right? We support, hey, it's community supported. We maintain this. It's been very popular. I could show you the number of downloads each of these releases has, which is like super, super substantial. After I make a release, sometimes I'm like, wow, it's got that many downloads already. We track issues for each project inside the GitHub issues, right? So if you have a problem, use the community. The issues come through GitHub, right? And you can always reach out to your TAM. They can reach out to me, if they have an issue, right? And we can help support here. Here, don't go to Broadcom support. It's an open source project, so it's maintainer and community supported. But we were definitely very, very super responsive, and constantly putting out releases. Pull request if you want to contribute. There's contributing agreement. You can read through, right? If you want to get involved, and contributing can be code, can be issues, can be discussions. We also have discussions. So if you have questions, right, you need help, community help, you can reach out here. We also publish announcements now that everything's over here. If I have a new release, I post an announcement. If there's a major issue, I'll post something and I'll pin it there, and you can get involved how you wish. So since I mentioned this Packer plugin for VMware, this is the one for the desktop hypervisors. I want to do a quick demo. So I'm going to pop over to, I have a couple different IDs, but for this, I'm usually in PyCharm or Goland, but for this, I'm actually going to use Visual Code, right? So hopefully you can see my screen over here. I'll pop this up. I happen to I've done a clone of the repo, right? So I can get a local copy of it. This isn't how you install the plugin. Read the documentation on packer.io, and it'll walk you through it. And then each of these projects will walk you through the process of how you install this plugin. And we have examples inside inside the repository. So here in the Packer plugin for vSphere, I can see that there's an example. There's one for ISO. There's one for VMX, right? I can get started. I can take a look at the README. Here, I'm just going to quickly build out and say I'm going to cd example slash ISO, right? Cool. I know I'm in there. I can LS that. I see I have a couple of different HCL files. Remember, the HCL files are basically the files that describe what I want to build, right? So it's superhuman readable. I'll say, hey, I'm going to use this version of the plugin, right? Or greater. It's VMware as a plugin. I'm going to use this version of Packer, right? Down here, I can actually see what my sources is. So I'm saying, hey, I have all these different key value pairs. Basically, say, hey, what version I'm going to run? What's the guest operating system? How many CPUs? What's my network adapter? And behind that are these variables, right? Which I can always override. So I can say, hey, what's my VM name going to be? My build password. How long do I want to boot wait? And under there are these different additional supporting files. So I happen to be on a Mac right now. So when we look at the ARM piece, I have defaults in my variables, right? As you see here, these are always the defaults. I can override those by passing in these PK vars. For this demo here, I'm going to override and pass in a guest operating system that's ARM, pass in E1000 directory. I'm going to do SATA, right? And I can pass in, say I'm going to call this Debian ARM 64 because I'm going to build this one here. So cool. So let's actually kind of see it in action. Let's clear that real quick, and I'm going to run. I should probably just, because I've been doing some things and go, I'm going to look at my README. My README will actually walk me through the process of what I can actually do to build this. This is my command here I'm going to use for my ARM on Fusion, right? So as soon as I run that, it's going to initialize it, and it's going to start the build of the process. Now, I've already downloaded Debian. I have a local copy of it, so I didn't have to download that ISO. It would download it for me. But you notice Fusion just popped up, right? So it immediately initialized Fusion. What it's doing now is it's going to connect over to Fusion over VNC. The VNC server runs in Fusion using the Go SDK that I also maintain. It allows me to send the key commands directly to the operating system as it's being built, and so I can pass in the boot commands here, the build commands. This process probably takes about 3 minutes. So it's actually building up, and you see this 172, right? This is actually building an image. It's running on a NATed network on Fusion. It could be the same thing with Pro, right? And it's going to build this image for me, and it's building out the Kickstart file. Now this is actually slow. I can actually increase the speed of this typing, but for this demo, this is the speed it's running. Over here on the console, I can see it's creating the message. HPairs has generated the VMX files that I need. It's powered on that machine. It's connected to VNC, which is you can see over here, and it waited for that machine to boot, and it's typing those commands. When it gets done typing the commands, you'll see the operating system then really boot into boot off that ISO, and you'll see over this on the other side where it's going to wait. Right, it's going to wait for the IP address to become available so it can SSH and then run any additional commands in there, right? So any post provisioners, I can say, hey, update a package or install a package or inject an application into it, right? Whatever I want to install into it. So now it's booting up, right? It's going to start installing the Debian operating system, and it's a way. So I'm going to pause right here if anybody has any questions on this, Brian.
Yeah, there's a question that's not on this specifically, but if you have time, it's about a Windows image, and someone's running into an issue where it halts on waiting for an IP because VMware Tools isn't present. And they have a workaround listed about kind of slipstreaming a driver into the Windows ISO, and they were wondering if there was a cleaner way.
Oh, there's a much cleaner way, and I can actually. Yeah, I assume you're talking about on the vSphere builder, and I can definitely show you a way to do that. In just a moment. I'm glad you mentioned that one. So let's hold that one, Brian. I promise I will definitely come back to that one. Notice here it's waiting for SSH to come online, and once it comes online, it's going to connect and finish the process. While it's happening, I'll quickly switch and talk about that. So in that scenario, it's waiting for IP because and VMware tools on vSphere needs to be running so it can get that IP and have the right drivers. Yes, you could slipstream that in. What I generally do and show you is when I boot the machine, I actually use three CDs, right? I use the ISO for Windows. Um, I use an ISO that I generate that actually has a dynamically created auto attend XML file in it, where I can pass in things like dynamically pass in my key, right? If depending on if I got a KMS key or something like that, my disk setup, my OS language, etc. But I also inject reference to another CD where I'm actually directly mounting the VMware Tools ISO that actually sits on the ESXi host, right? And then when the build completes, I actually there's a feature I added into the vSphere plugin where I can say, hey, when you get done, just leave one CD-ROM. And what it does is it follows a pecking order and says, remove the CDs from last in, right? Last in, first out, and it will move down. So I can say, I just want to keep one virtual CD-ROM or no CD-ROMs, right? And it will remove those, and that way I can, since I have the ISO attached to the virtual machine during the build process, I can then say, when a provisioner or PowerShell say, hey, go install VMware tools. And I can show you the scripts. I have a full set of examples if you haven't seen those, that I can share. So now you see Debian. We'll come back to that. Debian's online. It's waiting for an IP, right, to come available. And once that happens, we're good to go. I'm going to quickly flip over and show you another demo. It's actually another demo is, if you really want to get kind of nerdy, and there is a repository out here. So no, pop back, right? It connected over on SSH and it shut down our machine. Now it's just doing a cleanup, and notice it shut down the virtual machine for me. It's packaging it up and it's done. I can power it online. I can take a snapshot. I can do with it. I now have a fully functional version of Debian 13.3 sitting on my machine over here. I'm going to quickly show you another example, and this is on one of my repos, Packer VMware Daily, Ubuntu Daily ones. The kind of concept behind here was another example, where I can show, hey, what if I wanted to build just a shell script, right, to say, go out and build a virtual machine, right, for me. So I have Ubuntu Daily script here. You can totally go and look at the shell script, but this one's fun. It looks and says, hey, am I using Fusion? Am I using Workstation? Right? And builds a whole, it goes and detects my operating system. It's kind of a fun one where I can inject different keyboard layouts. I can inject different time zones. I can inject overrides, right? It has defaults, but I can override things as I want to. And the concept was to show, hey, here's how I can, I don't want to remember commands, and I can just write a script here that I can say, run Ubuntu daily, right? It generates a unique cryptographic password for me. So I can test this daily build. I already have a copy of the latest build for Ubuntu sitting on my machine. It validates that is the correct checksum. If not, it's going to go re-download the ISO, and now it's booting the latest ISO, which is probably going to be the one for the 2604 release coming up soon. And now it's going to build this. This one's also a little bit different. I'm actually building this one on a bridge network instead of a NAT network, so that the VM itself, when it boots up, is actually going to get an IP address not from Fusion or Workstation, as an example, but directly from my DHCP server on my home network here, which actually makes it a lot quicker. And the IP discovery isn't looking at the DHCP on Fusion or Workstation, it actually instead says, let me query that VMX file until guest tools is online, and it will wait for guest tools to tell me what the IP address is. So cool little demo here. It's pretty much the same deal as before. So we'll just let that run and flip back over to the slides in case there's any more additional questions. So any questions yet, Brian?
No.
Okay, cool. So I showed you the Ubuntu daily one. That one's running now, and I showed you that desktop hypervisor piece, right? The cool part with it, again, this is all can be all completely done in human readable HCL language. You can see the console, right? But the also thing is, you don't always have to just do this as a console. You can actually put this into you can actually build these and store these into your own Git repos, right? You maybe want to have a single mono repo where you have all your machine images defined. Maybe you want to have different repositories, but you can then expand that and build this kind of a loop with inside your build process. So you could say, hey, I want to build a machine image, and as I talked about before, right? I can mint that new virtual machine. I can mint the SSH keys that I need, or use ones that you provide, right? But during that build process, I can also use tools that you're used to today. So maybe you're an Ansible customer, right? And you want to use existing roles and playbooks that you have for operating systems. You can choose to bring those in and use those to inject those right into your build processes, using maybe if you write your own collection, use your own collection to do it, right? You have the power to bring that in. If you're using Salt, Michael Poor, who was one a former field person here, a consultant at Broadcom. He's written an integration for Salt, right? There are numerous integrations out there. You can use Shell, right? You can use PowerShell, right? If you've got existing Shell or PowerShell scripts that you use, you can bring those in and run those as well against the build, right? Or do a combination, right? Depending on what works for you. So there's a whole process there. You can even build it into integration with Ansible automation platform if you choose to do so, right?
Hey, Ryan,
Um,
one quick comment here. I wasn't
mhm.
scrolling far enough in the Q&A box, so I missed a question that I think
Okay.
is spot on, kind of what you were talking about.
Hmm.
And I think it's more of an opinion ask. Um,
Hmm.
so, the customer says that they have around 30 different server roles like SQL Web, et cetera.
Hmm.
And each of
Hmm.
those can vary slightly by region. So if they were to
Right.
rely only on Packer, that they would be constantly rebuilding and maintaining lots of images, and it'd be
Hmm.
like a never-ending cycle. So like, do you have like a opinion or thought on having like a minimal image and then use configuration management like afterwards to kind of customize the like kind of that minimal image to meet those 30 different applications in various regions?
Yeah. So, do I have an opinion? Yes, I'm always told that I have lots of opinions, um, and I'm not, but there's also the proverbial it depends. When I was talking about like you could build a descriptive just for say it's 30, right? A descriptive build for all 30 individually, right? And everyone is a complete end-to-end manifested build. Okay, cool, right? You do you, as I like to say. And you rebuild those, probably, every patch Tuesday or how often you want to do that. Cool, fine. If that works for you, great. Now, if you want to take a little bit another slight variation approach, you could build the base operating system, right, using the vSphere ISO, right, as an example, build that base operating system and say, I've got my super fantastic, awesome build there for Windows 2025, right, with all my bells and whistles that I need, right? Then I could build off that and have the clone where I say, clone that image, right, which it was a known good state. It is that capture, and then bring that online, inject my maybe a SQL or what have you into it, and then package that up and have the templates for that already ready, right? You could do that. And that in itself doesn't have to do anything special. If you're using Ansible to do that today, right? You can just build that in right into Packer and say, Packer, go bring up that operating system, run Ansible against it, package it, and then put that into my content library, right? Now you actually have a full build of an image that has everything in it. So then when you say you run VCF automation, you say, hey, bring up that image. I know it has everything in it. Now, conversely, you can say, I want VCF automation just to bring up that base build, and when it comes online, then call those Ansible roles, right? Ansible roles could have potentially changed between when you built that OVA versus what they are today. So it's really kind of a choice for you. So like if you change those Ansible roles, right, you might want to have to rebuild that image, right? Or you can say, I changed that role, so as soon as the operating system comes online from a VCF automation build or what have you, go run that role, right? Or the play against it. So it's really a choice. Opinion. I kind of like the option of running it after the image comes online. When it gets to things like SQL and certain things like that, I start to go, I might have certain variables and things I need to inject at build time, at runtime. So your mileage may vary on when you want to do that. But my opinion, do it when it's being built by VCF automation and call those through like a tower integration. So or AAP integration. So here you can see like I built that Debian one. Sorry, Ubuntu one for me. Really, really cool, right? Thanks for that, Brian. I also want to mention, so move on from the desktop side, talking about vSphere, right? So I have another project, right? And this is where for those questions that might come in handy, especially if you're someone who's not used Packer, right? And you want to start using Packer and the Packer plugins directly with vSphere and kind of get your feet wet and kind of learn and not have to learn by a lot of trial and error, right? There is it's a project that I started probably about five years ago. I myself I donated it to VMware. It's stayed. I still maintain it. Packer examples for vSphere. It's probably the second most popular project on our GitHub or for some reason. 696 stars still for some reason. Tons of forks, but this one actually has tons of different operating systems you can look for and to actually see examples of how my opinionated, or it's a reference, right? And it's an opinionated way of here's just showing you an example of how you can get started, right? Use this as a guide and kind of bootstrap your own learning, right? Maybe you're a home labber, right? You could take it as is, use it a home labber, right, to build your operating systems, or you then take it to another level or contribute back to the project. But the point is to start to understand how Packer works, especially in the vSphere. But then, oh wait, I don't have to use a shell. I can use Ansible, right? It has tons of different Linux distributions: Photon, Debian, Ubuntu, RHEL, and Oracle, and Fedora and SLES and so forth, and then obviously different Windows ones. I've kicked out some recently. Like Windows 10, I kicked out, right. I think kicked out some older versions that are no longer supported. If something's no longer under general support, I usually kick it out. But that project is available here on GitHub as well, right? Packer examples. So VMware, github.com/VMware/Packer examples for vSphere, right? You can see, tons of different operating systems that it currently allows for, and you can, get started. And if you're worried about how to get started, I have this nice link up here for a website, and it will bring up documentation. So the documentation is actually built with inside the repository. This is supported by me and the community, right? But here you can actually say, hey, how do I get started, and walk through, okay, well, how do I get, what do I need for my operating systems? What do I need for Packer? What versions, right? I'm going to use Mac OS. Cool. Here's how you can install the prerequisites. Or you're going to use a Ubuntu. Here's how you install the prerequisites. And here's the additional packages you'll need. And I have all the commands, like if and cool thing is if I say check Mac OS, As I follow through, it switches for me. You can copy the commands, trust but verify, right? Um, trust but verify, and you can install those into your home lab or where have you, and kind of get started. You can see what it currently supports. I am going to be kicking out vSphere 7 shortly, but it shows you how to get the project, shows you how to download the ISOs, right? Which ISOs we use, the privileges that you'll need, and then how to go through the configuration. All that is defined here within the project. So I'm going to do a quick demo, right, of that project. Now, I mentioned Ansible just to show you there is Ansible in here, right? And I have various roles, and I have various roles for the base one. The base one basically does like installs, updates, right? Whether it's Yum or TDNF or oh, I can't, or apps, right? Depending on the operating system, right? Or Windows update, right? I can pass those in, also install additional packages. It has one for injecting any users and SSH keys, depending on the operating system, configuring it, right? And also doing some cleanup. Maybe I want to configure rc.local. Maybe I need to do packaging and cleaning. But it's also smart enough that when it runs, it goes, oh, hey, if I hit main, I know based on the distribution of what to hit. So if it's a Windows, I know to hit the Windows. If I know if I'm hitting Photon, I know to hit Photon. If I'm hitting, specific OS family, it will redirect to the specific OS family. Have fun with it, right? But I'm gonna do a quick demo for you. Is there a question there, Brian?
No, there's a couple questions, but we can, I think,
Okay.
fit them in later.
So I have a clone of the project here, and I'm over on my vCenter here. I am really lame, and my domain name is example.com. I'm really lame in my home lab. But we're going to do an example here. So I'll pop over. I have a clone of the repo here. I can see that I'm on my develop branch here. Now I mentioned download. There's a project.json that has basically all the key information of all the different operating systems I support in this project and everything needed. If you ever want to download, use the project and say, I want to go download stuff, you can say, all right, I'm going to go download Linux, right? Sorry, choose the right one, right? I'm going to download Linux. I want to go get let's say I want to get Debian 13. So I hit 3. I'll actually get Debian 12. Boom. It's going to go out and it's going to download a copy of this. So, I already have that ISO. Man, I already have that ISO with me. Man, I can choose something else. Let's go back, right? Just kind of show you. Let's do Fedora. That's a fun one, right? Fedora. Oh, back. Download Fedora, right? And Fedora 43. And it's going to go out there and download Fedora 43, built it out, and it's downloading that latest copy of what the project actually supports. Kind of cool. I'm going to cancel this right now, right? Oh, I've actually run it again, by the way. So I'll say 1, right? Say Fedora again. It's going to, and say 1. It's going to say, oh, you got an existing ISO file, would I like to continue, right? Or overwrite it. So just kind of FYI there. So now I have this build. I have there's a config config.sh. I'm not going to run now because I've already done my configs, but it will build out my configuration files. So here I would have all my configurations for all my different operating systems and all the overrides that I would need. The paths to my ISOs, right? The names of the OS types, right? Common variables like what's my content library name? What common VMware version do I want to use? And so forth. All this is completely documented in the documentation. But I'm going to show you fun stuff. So we're going to do build.sh. I have rewritten some of this to run in Python. You don't actually have to run this sh script, right? You can use the native command, commands, packer build, etc. The shell script basically does it dynamically for you. So if you actually had this in a repo, you could write a GitHub action or GitLab CI, because I know some CSPs that actually do that with this project, and actually run the builds through a pipeline. So the cool part is I would say, let's say I choose Linux. We're going to choose Photon here. We're going to say Photon 5. And, Bob's your uncle. It's going to initialize it. And as you notice over here, Linux Photon 5 on my develop branch has been built. Going to power on the virtual machine. We sit back and we watch. And it's going to send the commands the same way. It's going to do a kickstart, a HTTP kickstart boot. I'll pop over here. I see I have an HTTP server running on port 8029, and then the kickstart is going to connect to that and run that. While that's running, I want to quickly show you. Someone had asked about Windows earlier, right? So let's take my example of Windows Server, for example, and I look at a build for that, right? Here, I am connecting my ISO paths. I'm connecting to, I can connect it to an ISO and content library if I want to, but I am saying connect to ISO path, local ISO path tools. And up at my top here, I have ISO path tools defined, and it's connecting to VMware images, tools images, and pulling the family. So in this case, it's windows.iso versus a linux.iso. And it adds that CD, right, during the build process. Now, once that build process comes online for that person that asked, I automatically generate the auto attend template. You can see here I've had things where I pass in OS languages, etc. Like keys. The project uses evaluation, but you can override it. But there's a portion in here where, if I can remember, in the auto attend, where I pass a path. Of course, me trying to actually show live, I'm going to forget where it is. So I'll say find E colon, no, F colon, yeah. Yeah, cool. So I tell it to run the VMware tools PowerShell command, right? A init command, but this PowerShell command, because I've attached the F drive, it's the third drive in the build. If I had multiple disk drives, might have changed that, but that's going to launch that script that I copy over locally comes out of my scripts directory for that person that was asking, and this is the Windows, and it's a script that will basically check and say, hey, is VMware Tools installed? If it's installed, is it running? If it's not running, start it. If it will attempt to install it. If it doesn't install it, it will retry a couple times. Once it verifies it started, it'll move on. So which is pretty cool. Down here, we're building that photon machine. You can see what happened is it came online. It connected through SSH, through the SSH communicator. Cool. It's running on my DHCP here at home, and then it kicked off the playbook for Linux. And so now it's stepping through each of those playbooks, like I mentioned, the base, the clean. It's installing additional packages. It's installing the latest version, latest updates to that guest operating system, and so forth. Right. So I'll pause there. Brian, you had some additional questions on that?
Yeah, if we get a few minutes. There's one question about a Red Hat owned image builder solution. But I don't think it's Packer. I think it's a separate image builder by the folks at Red Hat. Are you familiar with that? Do you have any opinions or thoughts on using it versus Packer?
I take my Broadcom hat off here. Broadcom hat off. My opinion as someone, Packer is pretty ubiquitous. It's used by most cloud providers to build their images. Most whether it's an Azure, Amazon, it's used extensively. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna show you something. GitHub. Um, Load statistics. Stats. TAM. Yeah, cool. I don't have familiarity with that, but owned by Red Hat. Red Hat owns Ansible. Guess who owns Red Hat? IBM. Guess who owns HashiCorp? IBM. Same family. Better together? Yes. HashiCorp working with Ansible, their whole integrations. Yes, it's a great family. I'd say in terms of coverage and plugins and wide community adoption and support and community of others using it to also help. Personally, I'd say pack is your way forward. Is the best one. If I quickly look at this that goes GitHub stats. When you actually initialize a plugin, when you use Packer, it has to download the plugin once, hold it locally, right? Initializes it once, right? And it actually connects. If you don't install it manually, it actually would get that from github.github.com based on the way the engine works. But if I actually look for the last releases of Packer plugin vSphere, the one that I released on February 18th, that minor version has already had 37,000 downloads, right? If I look at the 2.0 release, which I did in August, almost 400,000 downloads, right? You can actually say the large this is very widely used, and those are all just one downloads, right? One initialization. Once you initialize it, you don't have to initialize it again once you have it on your machine, right? In your image and your CI, or what have you. So lots of people are using these. Was another question there, Brian?
There was one about some URL redirect problems that were bouncing folks between documentation. If they have specific links that aren't working, would like a GitHub issue be the right way to?
Yes, it's actually a really great point. So let's say, for example, you're in, well, let's say you're over in vSphere, right? So if you're here in vSphere and you say open a new issue, right? I support all kinds of different issues, right? Bug reports, if you actually have a bug, there's ones for documentation, there's one for enhancement requests, right? And also there's references here. But say, for example, it's an issue with documentation. If it's one in the plugin itself, open it in the plugin. If it's one with the Packer examples, open it. Follow the document, follow the guide, right? Definitely, if you're writing something, some shell command, whatever, you know, use this over here. This is what this is built for. But follow the process. And if you have questions, reach out to your TAM. They reach out to me. Happy to have any conversations. Very much again, opinion the community matters. Being a force multiplier and actually hearing, if you have problems and needs or have ideas for features, you can open up issues, right? For big like changes, right, and things like that. If you can also use, if it's just I need help or you have an idea, open up a discussion, right? But yeah, feel free to do that. And either myself as the maintainer or someone in the community will help you. I even have some here, like I'm currently working on for the next milestone. I'm gonna be completely transparent. I'm working on this one. This one I'm working on adding some support for the customer that I support. Right, I do a lot of this in my free time, but it is it's when I'm not doing my day-to-day TAM duties. So, I want to show another quick demo, and here we can see we actually finished a build using for Photon using that examples. Right, I could have done Windows, I could have done Fedora, I could have done any one of those number of operating systems, but you can see it went through and it used the Ansible playbook to actually do all that processing. You can use it as is, right? But as a learning. But I encourage you to use the Packer examples for vSphere as a tool to help you learn, or home lab, or then take the concepts and then figure out how you can bring that into your own environment. I want to show you one other kind of cool thing. I'm actually not allowed to exactly like open source it and provide it, but I want to show you another cool concept which you can have. So I have another project. Again, I'll quickly throw up here. What if you wanted to create an appliance, right? So let's say you wanted to create an appliance, right? I'm going to use use vSphere here, right? I'm going to use the vSphere provider, right? And I'm actually I've actually written code here that will actually generate an appliance for an offline depot. right? A VCF 9 offline depot, right? Is the example here. And just kind of this is to show you the power of what this can actually do, right? And in this appliance, right, I can say I have my definitions, right? I'm going to connect to my vCenter, right? All this could be also these could also be export vars, et cetera. But I've defined the different things I want to connect to my DC1, my cluster one. This is the storage I'm going to use. This is the network. All this is overridable. It can also use again. Environmental variables. You don't have to use these. You can overwrite these. I'm going to do default two CPU, right? 8 gigs. It's going to have a big old 500 gig drive here. I'm going to use Photon 5, right? Okay, cool. That's the operating system I'm going to build, right? I have a definition. I'm going to use vSphere ISO. I'm going to build a virtual machine, right? This is my storage. This is my adapter, right? The versions, everything I'm going to have for it, all basic kind of stuff. My boot command that I'm going to use, all right? Nothing too magical. Very similar to the other one. This is my kickstart file. This is actually dynamic creates the kickstart file that's used by the operating system when it boots, and it injects things like my build password and root password and everything I need for sudo, right? Cool. I've got my locals for anything I need. I've got my versions defined, right? It can use that one. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. I can actually make that 2.1.0. This is an older version I had built with, right? And then I have this appliance sh, another shell script, right? Rand decided to do. I did this because I wanted to, when I ran it, I always wanted to make sure I had things like OVF tool, right? I want to make sure I have JQ and Packer was there and PowerShell, because those are some things I need. All right, why is Ryan showing me all this, right? Well, the kind of concept here is I have a set of scripts, right? And I have the VMware download tool here, right? And I put the VMware download tool in there. I've actually created scripts that say, hey, this is my script to clean up when it gets done. This is my script to install updates, right? But there's all this stuff in here I have around these. What are these? These are OVF properties, right? And I'm passing in variables that I'm capturing. I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to call this, let's see, TAM customer clients, right? That sounds fun, right? Just for just a name there, right? Just hit save, right? Why is Ryan doing that? This is going to pull that JSON. This script is actually going to go build, but what it's going to do is it's going to build a Photon appliance. It's going to run a couple of different scripts, right, to patch the operating system, install the patches I need. Also set different systems. I want SSH to be running, right? I want to configure my network, pass in IP address, pass in a DNS server. Ryan, why are you asking these questions here, right? Pass in DNS, pass in IP addresses, start the network. Okay, cool. I'm starting to follow. Pass in appliance name. This is going to come from that thing that just said TAM appliance, right? From the appliance JSON. Okay, I think maybe you're following me here. Then I have depot, right, as an example, right? So another script is going to run. What happens is the setup script is going to take the variables you pass it. It's going to get those OVF properties and inject those into the OVF properties of the virtual machine. So I can ask questions through OVF properties. So I can ask things like, do you want to provide the VCF version you want? Do you want to provide your download token? Do you want to skip? Do you want to enable SSH? Do you want to enable ICMP? What are your DNS and NTP servers? Give me your host name and IP address, right? And ask those questions. And then based on that, it's going to run on the first boot of the image, it's going to run a series of these scripts in order to take those properties that you provided, inject them into the OVA, and you have an appliance, right? So kind of show the real thing on happening here, appliance.sh. It's going to run. It's going to say initializing. And let's see. Cool. Building the TAM customer appliance here, right? So pop over here. I can say the offline depot appliance is started over here. It's going to build. pass this in. This takes about 3 minutes to run, so we're going to watch this while it runs. What it's going to do is it's going to build the appliance like you saw before in the demo, but it's also going to, when it finishes the build, it's going to then inject the OVF properties, and it's going to package it as an OVA. So the next time that when I have that OVA and I want to go deploy that OVA, it's going to actually say, hey, you've got the TAM customer clients or whatever I called it here, right? 1.1.0.0. What's your IP address? Do you want to enable ICMP? Do you want it's going to install Nginx for me, right? And it's going to set up an HT-access file with, the username and password that I provided, right? And then I could pass in a download token. It injects the download tool. And so it could download everything and configure an offline depot for me magically. I also inject some deployment options. So when I deploy it, it also says, hey, do you want small, medium, large? And by doing that, when I can say, oh, small, medium, large, just like you have vCenter, it can control the number of CPUs and memory as well in the appliance build. And then when it gets done, it exports everything right here into an appliance folder. But Brian, if you have any questions, I'll take those while this builds.
Yeah, there's just someone who's new to Packer wanting to know if this can help with a VCF bring up, or if they should use the traditional cloud builder and SDDC manager for deployment.
So completely different concepts. But I'll throw a little caveat here. Absolutely, VCF bring up. You use what you have. This is for building the machine images that you would use on top of the platform, right? So your guest operating system for the applications that you need, right? That's what this is for. However, the actual example I'm giving you here is actually I'm building an appliance that actually is going to run my offline depot, which I could then build this appliance, I could change this to use Rail, I could change this to use Ubuntu, what have you. But then when I deploy my installer, I could point the installer to this offline depot that I have locally. So kind of using both at the same time. So that's a very good question. So here example here, it's built up. The appliance is just waiting for a provisioner to finish. When this provisioner finishes, it's going to then call to shutting down the operating system. It finished everything. I didn't patch the operating system because that takes additional time. But I did all the configuration. It's ejecting my CD-ROMs, right? So I'm removing CD-ROMs as we talked about before. Now it's downloading the VMDK here. It shouldn't take very long. It will download that VMDK, and then it's actually going to inject the OVF properties and repackage everything as an OVA file. And then what I'll show you is actually taking that file that we just built and walking through the OVF, and you'll see that the OVF properties were injected. So while that's running in the background, let's just kind of quickly pop back over to the slide, right? We're doing this one here, right? I want you to also think about, how you can use this. I mentioned it before. You can do local development. You can do things on your desktop, right? You can do local development and testing against, lab equipment or what have you, or in your real life environment. Just like I was just doing here in this demonstrations, right? All my stuff is actually in Git, right? I use GitHub Enterprise. You might use GitLab or Bitbucket. Source control doesn't matter. But the cool thing is putting that stuff into source control, so you have a place where that is located. You can learn how to use Git if you haven't become familiar with it. But you can keep everything in source control. You can create issues. You can do merge requests or pull requests and manage that, and then build on a continuous integration. So you can use things like GitHub Actions or GitLab CI, for example, to run these on a process, right? And then build your images. Because think about this perspective. What if I am using VMware Cloud Foundation automation, right? Cool, we want you using that. But I want to have a pipeline that is going and running my builds for my images, right, on a regular interval, right? I could automate that to run. Maybe it runs every Tuesday, right? Every Tuesday, every month, however you want to do it, right? Or on demand. Think about a content library, right? If I build an image and it passes and it's a good build, and I inject that then into my content library as an OVF template, right? Think about the way OVF templates in content library, they're versioned, right? So the latest one is the latest one. Well, if I have VCF automation connecting to content library, discovering my templates, I point it to one template, OVF template. If Packer and my pipeline build a new image and inject it as a new version, right, it's automatically picked up by VCF automation, right? The next request, once that complete can pick that up. So you can actually build kind of this pipeline factory of building your images for the operating systems that you use, and then have that directly be able to be used either as traditional templates or content library items, whether they be OVF templates, like I just mentioned, or VM templates, right? You can do either, right? I do have a customer, which I'll share with that this image is building, and I'm curious if anybody else might be thinking about this because it's a project that I'm working on. I try to come back to this. Is maybe you don't want to put it in content library. Maybe your source of truth is something like Artifactory, right? Um, so I am personally, in my personal free time, working on a Packer plugin for JFrog Artifactory as a post processor. So when a build completes, even though it can be a template or OVF, however, is it can take that artifact and be able to put that OVA or OVF image into Artifactory and be kind of like that's my gold image, but that is going into my Uber source control, right? So that's something I'm also looking. I'm working on squirreling away and building in my free time as a personal project. It's not live yet, but just kind of hey, that's something I'm also looking at doing. So look, our image built took 4 minutes and 11 seconds to build that. And for my last trick here, my last demo here, I'm going to go say deploy OVF. We say choose a local file. We're going to point it to that. Let's check the date on that's today, 12:08. That's it. 754 meg, right? It's going to go read that. We're going to call this, I don't know, Brian. Brian W, right? Not Brain. Cool. And say automatically power it on. And right now it's reading the OVF properties, reading the OVF descriptor file out of the OVA. There is the content they put in there, right? Nothing to be appliance, Broadcom, no certificate. Cool. Oh, look, small, medium, large. There's those deployment patterns that I put in. Notice that basically I can control the memory, right? Once I get past here, I can go and say, choose my storage. I've just built an appliance. When say put up my VM, my cheesy VM network, I'm going to enable ICMP. I'm gonna call it depot example. Look at all these stuff pre-filled, Ryan. I just give the citers here, make my life easy. Let's say there's my DNS, NTPay, VMware one bang. All right, depot. We're gonna call this Brian. Brian since and yeah, one bang. So this is the actually going to create the htaccess file for me, right? I'm going to skip the download for here, right? I'm not going to put in a token for now. If I put in a token and I dropped in, say 902.902.0, for example, because I'm taking this from the OVF properties, when it boots up, and if I was saying, if I wasn't skipping download and I provided a token, when it boots it the first time, it would download all the binaries for the VCF offline depot for me. So I'm going to say deploy that, and that's going to deploy. And when it comes online, it's going to then have Nginx running with the download tool, take all those properties and configuration, and I'd have an offline depot server sitting there, basically a built-in appliance. So I think kind of my key takeaways here, right? You have the different plugins, right? To get started with Packer. Desktop, you have vSphere, right? These are open source, Broadcom originated open source projects now. They are on our github.com/VMware. They're supported by the maintainers and the community, not by Broadcom support, right? Um, again, firm believer of community. If you have issues, reach out to your TAM. They know how to reach me. Um, I can help them open an issue. I know some customers can't open up GitHub issues, so if the TAM needs to open up an issue on your support on your behalf, that's cool. All right, we talk about it. Happy to talk one on one. I can make myself available to you guys, especially if you're learning, right? Or you have issues. If you have ideas or enhancements, feel free to open up enhancement requests or a discussion about that, or even reach out to your TAM. They can reach out to me. Again, firm believer in the power of the community, and seeing you guys hopefully be able to move from these traditional build methods over to more automated pipeline builds for your operating systems. So with that, I'm going to sit there and, oh, that's all. That's almost done. Maybe we can finish that up. Brian, are there any other questions?
Yeah, there's no questions in Q&A at the moment.
Do you have any questions?
No. Yeah, no, this has
Okay.
been a great session. Really, really appreciate you digging into it. If folks have questions, feel free to make use of the Q&A feature here in Zoom. And if there's a question that we didn't get to or can't get to yet today, reach out to your TAM. They'll get you connected with Ryan. And yeah, we'll give this another minute here to finish up.
Yeah. Just to show you here, the appliance is booting up and it's running the RCD local script, right? Those series of scripts, right? It's configuring Nginx, offline depot, right? Configuring the banner, right? So when this actually boots up, it's that banner is probably going to say something like TAM customer appliance, right? When it reboots. If that was actually downloading the tool, downloading the binaries through the VDT, it would obviously be a longer process as it downloads everything from offline depot. But that is this appliance we just built. Okay, look, welcome to TAM customer appliance based on that name that we changed, just to show you that I'm not showing you any trickery here. So if I pop over here, refresh, should get an IP address soon, and I have my Nginx appliance online. So let's just really quick to see if that happens.
And
Why
does it
not?
generate like a self-signed certificate so that it's HTTPS and
It does. It does.
okay,
It
nice.
absolutely does. So the other thing I was actually, kind of playing around with it. So I'm glad you said that because there's also another kind of a little bit of trickery you could even kind of conceivably do here is say, okay, well, if you give it to me in PIM format, right, and you have it ahead of time, right, I won't use it as self-sign.
Mm,
We'll just inject it as is. But also, if I know that sign certificate, I could have a curl script that runs locally also to then hit the if you didn't know, the APIs for installer and SDC manager actually have a trusted v1/system/trusted dash certificates. We can actually send the certificate directly into installer and SDDC manager to the trust and inject it into this trust store instead of doing any command line nerdery and hackery at the command line. So just so you know, you can do that dynamically. So, okay, here we got an address 111, right? So if I go over here and go HTTPS, all right, there it is. So she popped me for, BRIAN, BMWARE, boom, my offline depot appliance. So
nice.
that's my session. I hope you found some of that interesting. I hope you learned something. If you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to your TAM. If you have ideas, want to get involved, or whatnot. Again, I believe in power community. Be a force multiplier. Reach out to your TAM. Then reach out to me. We can connect and hey, go build some automated images.
There was a quick question that,
Mhm.
that came into chat, and I know the focus of the session today was focusing on the VMware plugins for
Yeah.
Packer, but there are other plugins, right? So like if I wanted to use
Oh
this to
yeah.
automate something else, right? Like it's not a VMware proprietary or specific thing.
Not at all. Not at all. So if I go over to Packer integrations, right, and I say, I mentioned Salt earlier, right? Salt, right? There's one from Michael Poor, right? If I wanted to use, let's pick, I'm not going to pick that one. Azure, right? There's that one, right? You can use Amazon, right? I think where is it, Oracle? Oracle has one, right? Pick a cloud provider, another cloud provider brand. Let's see,
Rackspace.
OVH. Let's see. No, Rackspace doesn't have one. There's Ali Cloud, obviously. Obviously the ones there's plugins for Ansible, Cloud Stack, DigitalOcean, Docker, right? And now when you say if I pick one, so let's just pick on a good thing to know, right? So let's say I pick on I'm gonna pick on Azure, right? You can see also HashiCorp, you can see who owns it, right? So here you can also see the get the GitHub link where you can go and look at their issues, look at the code base, look at the releases, etc. But yeah, you can read the documentation. That our documentation gets injected into here when in the build. There's tons of different plugins. When I finish writing my uh, project over here, you'll see that land over here in the integrations as well. So yes, lots of different ones.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, hope you guys learned something. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to your TAM and we can go from there.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much. Very, very useful. Lots of great ideas to come for sure. As we mentioned at the beginning, hop onto YouTube, subscribe to the VMware TAM Services channel. This video should be posted there in the next couple of days. And then watch for a registration link from your TAM for the April webinar. We'll be covering the Avi load balancer solution. We look forward to seeing you on, I think it's April 9th for that next session. Great. Thanks again.